Many of the Arab states would really love to see Hamas absolutely taken apart, destroyed, wiped out. They wouldn't have a problem with that, nor would the Palestinian Authority. The Egyptian, they would absolutely love Hamas to be destroyed because Hamas's roots are in the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood operate inside Egypt trying to overthrow the state. There's a small insurrection going on in the Sinai Desert, for example. The Saudis are well aware that Hamas's brand of Islam is exactly the sort of people they have inside Saudi Arabia trying to overthrow the House of Saud.
The Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, is on his visit to Israel today, claims that American officials are babysitting the fragile ceasefire in Gaza. And meanwhile, the British Defence Secretary, he said that UK troops will be sent as part of a multinational mission to monitor the ceasefire. We can talk to Tim Marshall, author of Prisoners of Geography. Welcome back to you, Tim.
Hello there, John.
Tim, welcome. Can I ask you first of all about the job that these British troops, a small number of British troops, are going to be given? They're on their way, or will be on their way to Israel to monitor the ceasefire. What does that actually mean? What will they be doing?
It's a small team. I think they're all officers, led by a two-star, which is probably a major general. And he or she will be one of the deputies to the American who will command this task force. So what do? It's called the Civilian Military Coordination Center. It's inside Israel, very important. None of these Brits, or indeed the Americans, are expected to actually cross into Gaza. They will be experts in transport, in logistics, and in liaison, because they will be part of a much bigger team that tries to liaise so that, and do the logistics so that you can transport all the aid in, that you can get all the different militaries in, that if it ever comes to it, the stabilization force, inserting, let's say, 20,000 troops from 3 or 4 different nationalities across into Gaza takes a lot of liaison, logistics and transport. So they are specialists in that, as I understand it. That's their job. They're in there. And it is, we spoke on Monday, and I was making the case that we were still incrementally advancing towards phase 2, and that the ceasefire, even the aberrations, can be got past. And I think this news and the fact that Vance did show up yesterday, J.D. Vance, Vice President, did show up. Rubio, I think, the Secretary of State, is coming tomorrow. And you said babysitting it. The joke in Israel is that they're babysitting it.
Okay, right now. So a small number of British officers operating it as a kind of overwatch of the ceasefire, because we're not going to see British forces, British soldiers, as part of the eventual multinational security force, which is supposedly destined for Gaza. That's going to be made up of soldiers from Arab and Muslim majority nations.
Yes, the Indonesians have gone a bit quiet. At the United Nations General Assembly about a month ago, the new Indonesian president was talking about maybe offering up 20,000 Indonesian troops, but he's gone pretty quiet since then. Still in the frame are Egypt, which would probably lead it. The UAE may contribute. Qatari troops may be in there, and that's problematic for the Israelis because Qatar hosts Hamas. Turkish troops are in the frame, also difficult for the Israelis, who are at daggers drawn with Turkey. But there are 4 or 5 countries who are in the frame. But you've got to get all the way to phase 2 beginning, which is, and again, forgive me for repeating, John, but we discussed it briefly on Monday about you need the UN resolution, you need this coordination center up and running, then you need the numbers of forces that are going to go in. And then specifically, it needs clarity. What are the terms of engagement? And the Israelis will want to know for sure that these guys are going to disarm Hamas, because if they get in there, let's say there's 10,000 Qatari troops, for example, that are supposed to be working with Hamas to go to the arms depots and see them handed over. You can see a scenario where they could turn into a shield. Because if Hamas isn't disarming and you've got 10,000 Qatari troops between them and the Israelis, how do the Israelis then go back after Hamas. So all this stuff has got to be ironed out before the troops go in.
Right. I must ask you about President Trump's social media post yesterday evening. I've got to say my eyes widened, my eyebrows shot up.
Are you going to shout it, John, because it was all in capital letters?
There were large parts of it were in capital letters, and the bits that were in lowercase were still pretty astonishing. I'm just going to quote some of the bits of the president's post. And what he says is, and I'm quoting now, he says, numerous of our now great allies in the Middle East and surrounding areas have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, this is Donald Trump still, informed me they'd welcome the opportunity at my request to go into Gaza with a heavy force and straighten out Hamas if Hamas continues to act badly. And he goes on, it's a beautiful thing to behold. I told these countries and Israel not yet. There's still hope that Hamas will do what's right. If they do not, an end to Hamas will be fast, furious, and brutal. And it goes on. But Tim, what on earth are we to make of the President of the United States telling the world that there are numbers of presumably Arab countries ready to go into Gaza and destroy Hamas?
Well, most of it's nonsense, but some of it's true. The true bit is that many of the Arab states would really love to see Hamas absolutely taken apart, destroyed, wiped out. They wouldn't have a problem with that, nor would the Palestinian Authority. The Egyptian, they would absolutely love Hamas to be destroyed because Hamas's roots are in the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood operate inside Egypt trying to overthrow the state. There's a small insurrection going on in the Sinai Desert, for example. The Saudis are well aware that Hamas's brand of Islam is exactly the sort of people they have inside Saudi Arabia trying to overthrow the House of Saud, etc., etc. So that bit's true. The idea that they would actually go in and do it, I think that bit's less true. And Trump's even sort of hinted that the Americans would go in and would somehow smash Hamas. Well, Israelis, after what, 2 years, have certainly taken apart a good deal of Hamas, but I'm not exactly sure, without actually sending in the 82nd Airborne on the ground, what the Americans could do that the Israelis haven't. So I don't see that scenario coming to pass.
No, I mean, that does sound like a bit of an understatement. I mean, the idea, and this is the President of the United States saying there are numerous Arab countries not just wishing to see Hamas removed, but ready to go in there and fight and kill to do it. And by the way, the Americans ready to go in there as well. I mean, it just seems so wildly implausible as to be absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, it's part of what we've seen for the past 9 months and what we saw in the previous 4 years. But I do always fall back on that maxim that was coined in the first Trump administration, but not enough people still have taken it on board. Take him seriously, but don't always take him literally. You know, behind all that bluster, there is something, but no, all that stuff is just nonsense. And you know what? I reckon that if the Saudis went in, for example, they're extraordinarily well equipped, but they are extraordinarily badly trained. I mean, Hamas would probably make short shrift of any Saudi forces that went in and tried to take them apart. It's only the Turks that really have a formidable fighting and with a lot of experience of fighting military. So, you know, many people would like to see Hamas taken apart. Very few people would actually try it.
Yeah, okay. Tim, great to get your thoughts. In my stubborn way, or whatever, however you want to describe it, I do sort of keep on carrying on reading and listening to what the President of the United States says and giving it, I know, some objective scrutiny rather than just giving it vast amounts.
And through it, John, there is a semblance of a plan. It's just hard to follow it sometimes.
Right, Tim. Well, you know, we will have another such conversation before long. I've no doubt. Tim Marshall, thank you.